Welcome to the X Podcast. We're excited to have you back for another episode, and I have two of my favorite guys with me today.
Yes.
I have Jesse and Zach.
How you doing?
Hello.
I'm doing great. How are you guys?
Doing great.
Good.
We kicked Russell off.
Yeah.
We did. Actually, he traveled, and then he tried to come back sick, and we're like, stay away.
We don't want that sickness, right?
No, it is running around right now.
It is.
Oh my gosh, you have it?
No, I don't have it.
Oh.
Charlie has it.
No, Charlie has it?
Yeah, Charlie has it.
Which means you have it next.
No.
We know several people. I feel like right now, for whatever reason, I feel like I know tons of people who have some sickness.
So Morgan Clapper was just telling me about this. Her husband travels for work and does stuff. He's doing some stuff in Kentucky right now.
Mm-hmm.
And he's saying in Kentucky, they're kind of panicking and shutting schools down.
The pandemicing?
Pandemic
Shutdown 2.0.
Because you have RSV, cold and flu, and COVID all hitting at the same time. In Kentucky, it's real bad, and they're like shutting schools down. And
it's a new wave. It's a new wave.
New wave.
A new wave. The lockdown is coming. We'll talk about that. Let's talk about that. Maybe we'll go back to the lockdown. But
speaking of new wave,
new wave, there is no new wave.
I heard there was a red wave.
There was supposed to be a red wave, and there wasn't one as of the time of recording this. So we always like to start off with something cultural. And as of recording this, we still don't know what is happening with the midterm elections. And we're recording this on a Wednesday. I think it's coming out Friday.
Yeah.
Hopefully by Friday we'll know. Mm-hmm. But what was anticipated hasn't happened, and they're saying the race is too close to call.
It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. I voted, and yet it's crazy. We still don't know who our new president is. Oh, wait a minute. That was the wrong one. Never mind.
Wrong election.
I cast the wrong vote. Okay. So we were voting for governor here in Ohio, which that one was decided.
Yeah, Mike
DeWine got reelected.
State senator,
House of Representatives, quite a few of them.
Yep.
And we don't know. Too close to call.
It is kind of crazy. I mean, when you look at, I think all the predictions going into it was that Democrats were going to lose, just hundreds of seats.
Hundreds?
Not hundreds.
How many seats are there?
How's that possible?
I don't even think that's possible.
There's 435 seats.
There are, but I don't think they're going to lose hundreds.
No, not that. They're going to lose a lot.
Yeah, a lot, like as in four.
As in,
no, I'm just kidding. It was going to be more than that.
It was going to be more than that. But now they're saying that, if the Republicans get control of the House, and it looks like they will, it's only going to be by the slimmest of majorities. And really not.
So we will be, once again,
gridlocked
back to where nothing happens
for the next 2 years.
Yep. Except by executive order, which has kind of become the MO for the last several years. Not just the last two, but I'm talking about even further back. Mm-hmm. That has been if you want to do something, you just make it Obama. You just go ahead and sign executive orders and just take control, and you do it. And so I don't know. I walk away from midterm elections going, man, we are no closer to forming any type of unified consensus as a nation of what direction to move, and we're split down the middle more than ever.
It is crazy.
So once again, politics will not save the day.
Yeah,
what a surprise!
We all know that.
What a surprise! But I think fascinating thought. One of the things I was reading recently, and it just made me think about this. And I was curious if you guys were going to be doing it. Is I learned this new term. We were talking about it probably a week ago at a conference. This term called revenge travel. Have you guys heard the term?
Revenge travel?
Revenge travel.
Okay. I've not heard of the term.
Okay. Well, revenge travel is this idea that people are, I'm trying to say this nicely and correctly without, it's like this, okay, people are like giving COVID the middle finger. Is that a okay way of saying it? The way I read it was a lot worse than that. Giving COVID the middle finger and saying, you forced me, again, there's no you, it's just the whole experience, the pandemic. You forced me to stay home, so now that it's open, I'm going to just go everywhere and do everything that was taken away from me. And so they're saying there's this massive surge in travel, and I'll tell you, when I went to Atlanta a couple weekends ago, and we left early in the morning on a Monday, and everybody was telling us, it'll be no big deal at that time. We got there, and the lines were, and I've never seen anything like
massive.
It. I have TSA pre-check.
Here in Columbus, of course
no,
you do.
In Atlanta. Everybody should have TSA pre-check. If you don't have TSA pre-check, something's wrong with you. I'm sitting here telling Russ, who loves to travel 75 times a year, who doesn't have it. I'm like, what is wrong with you? No, he doesn't have it. He's like, yeah, I should probably look into it. Right as I'm going to one line and he's walking to a line that was like, I mean, we're texting the whole time we're in line.
Ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who don't know, Pastor Tim is like the king of efficiency. And so when you travel with him, he is like he's ready to go. He's through pre-check line. You're still like back taking your shoes off.
That's your own dumb fault. I don't have to take my shoes off. I don't have to typically put my laptop or iPad out of my bag. I don't have to, I mean, any of that stuff. It's the greatest thing ever. It's $85 for 5 years. Why wouldn't you?
I mean,
for 5 years.
I mean, I fly once every 5 years, maybe.
Okay, well, then maybe it's not. I forgot you're a recluse. We'll talk about that. You don't like to go anywhere. So I guess you're saying you do zero revenge travel.
Oh, yeah, no. I do zero travel.
Zero travel.
So definitely no revenge travel for me.
What's the furthest you've ever traveled away from home?
You went to Columbus once?
Mileage-wise, Los Angeles, I think, is the farthest I've gone.
Okay.
Wait. Have you not left the country?
I've left the country.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where did you
Canada?
go?
No, I've gone to the DR. I've gone to El Salvador. El Salvador is actually where I gave my life to Christ.
Oh, wow.
Actually. I think those are the only 2 times I went out of the country.
Are those further away than L.A.?
Maybe.
El Salvador's, I would think. Dominican wouldn't be.
No,
I don't think it's 3. I think it's not that far.
El Salvador might be close.
Might be close.
But, yeah.
Interesting.
So
But never gone across the pond.
So I don't know if I get this revenge travel idea. I mean, I guess maybe everybody has a bunch of money that they can go traveling a lot at a time.
We did get a lot of stimulus checks during the pandemic.
Oh, I guarantee everybody spent all those. I got them sitting in a drawer at home.
Yeah, exactly.
Mine's in the form of my refrigerator at home now.
Yeah. Yeah.
You used it to help the economy. Look at you.
People do that. I mean, they say spending is still going strong, even though there's record inflation and all that.
Speaking of which, we just had our last quarter was an increase in our GDP.
No, that is interesting.
Right? And so inflation should be going the other way.
But it's staying high.
But they're also still raising interest rates. Conspiracy theorists go. Because, I mean, some people are now questioning whether or not they are killing the housing market. It's slowed down significantly.
They are for sure killing
the housing market.
Mortgage rates are over 7% now.
I know. And so whenever you have your GDP is increasing, and it depends on what job employment is doing, which I think that's been on the rise. At least it was over the last several quarters, just because people quit after the pandemic.
Yeah.
And then you take that, and they're trying to cool down a market that we had that was inflated big time by raising the interest rates. And everybody's like, whoa, the market's slowing way down and you're still raising interest rates? You're going to kill the market. And this is going to be bad. So we can actually cause worse damage by doing that.
But
recession.
I was listening to what's his name, Robert. He's one of the sharks.
Oh, yeah, we're talking about.
He was just saying that, like, it's clear now in hindsight we should have raised interest rates earlier than what we did.
They were really slow.
They were really slow in that. But he's like, but now, like most things in life, we tend to overcorrect as a culture and as a society. Now we're like raising them too much, too fast, and we haven't yet seen or given time for the raises to actually take effect. And now it's actually going to do way more damage than...
So you bring up this idea of overcorrection.
Yes.
That I would love to just talk about, because I think, we've all lived through, all of us here at least, have lived through kind of the pandemic and the cultural reaction to the pandemic. Now we're seeing things on the other side kind of almost extreme. Like I was talking about, we had revenge travel. It's people who are like, I couldn't go travel for that year or 2 years. I'm making up for it. We're doing weekend trips. We're going here. We're going to do things that, is, I see this idea of an overreaction to, let me give a good point. And I'm just curious of your guys' experience to this. Leading up to the pandemic, I felt like if you ask most people how they felt about life, the adjectives they would have used is they would have been overwhelmed, tired, busy, exhausted, just life was, we move before the pandemic, we move at just a breakneck speed as a culture. And then the pandemic came and it forced us to slow down. And everybody complained about having to slow down, quarantine, and like we're being forced to not that. And then we get to the other side of it. And, the question is, are we overreacting with revenge travel and things like that, where now everybody, because we're going to swing back the other way. And what I'm seeing, and we were talking about this, you and I were, that people right now, at least that we've kind of had this collective feeling for maybe the last couple months here and what we do, that we feel busier than ever.
Oh, for sure.
Like overly busier than ever. And so I'm wondering, are we seeing a cultural overreaction now to what we were forced to do 2 years ago in the pandemic?
Yeah, it is an interesting question. I forget who I was talking to someone on staff a couple weeks ago or a month ago, and I kind of said the unthinkable thing. I'll say it here, just don't cancel me. I guess you can if you want to. But I said, was quarantine maybe better? Or I kind of miss quarantine a little bit. So
you miss quarantine?
Maybe just a little bit.
You miss quarantine?
Big time.
So if you want to,
you're not gonna get a lot of people that maybe say that, but why don't you tell us why?
So I guess maybe I don't miss quarantine. I remember it was probably April 2020, and I was talking with, I forget who it was. I'm like, apparently my normal lifestyle is called quarantine to everyone else, because it didn't change a whole lot, other than the social pressure to be involved in a lot of things. I was just kind of released of that, like, so I can just kind of hang out at home, which I'm very much a homebody. Super introverted. My home is my safe place, it's my happy place. I'm like, now I just have an excuse to stay here all the time and not feel like a loser about it.
That's a good point. That's a good point. I do think back to those moments. I do think probably all of us, in a way, felt like there are some social pressures to connect and meet, that it was easier you had a great excuse
to say no
to community, or to, which is, it's like, isn't it weird? There's this there's this ironic, almost kind of like we need and want community, but then when we have an opportunity or an excuse not to do it, or not to feel like, well, I better, we better go out with our friends, or we better go do this, whatever. We had that excuse. We were like, I feel kind of relieved that I don't have to.
You don't have to.
Plans are canceled.
Our plans are canceled. Well, when sports plans were canceled, when all of this, I didn't like when sports on TV was canceled. But if I didn't have to go do kids sports things, then it's kind of like, it's not so bad.
It's not so bad.
Really?
Time being given back to you.
Yeah, well, it's nice. I like that. I think, coming out of it for us, we've got 3 young girls, and we just felt this kind of immense pressure to, like, you have to get them involved in, spring sports, and then ballet, and then fall sports. I mean, there's so many things you got to get them involved in. You have to go to every after-school extracurricular thing, and you have to give them all these experiences that they didn't have during quarantine. It just, Rebecca and I were talking about this the other day, there's this pressure that now is back on us, and that we feel like during quarantine, it just wasn't there. And there was something freeing about that I don't know, I just kind of missed that feeling. What I was going to say, though, you were talking about community. I think, yes, we all want community, but I think sometimes it's a little hard to feel like, okay, if we're forcing it. Like, sometimes I think we'll go to things, or people will hold parties or get-togethers because we feel like we're supposed to, or we have to. I think what the pandemic did, or what quarantine did, is it gave us the ability to intentionally choose where are we spending our time, who are we spending our time with. And so I actually found that those moments where I was connecting with people during quarantine, they were more meaningful to me. And I actually felt a stronger sense of community in that time.
So is it weird? Where does this social pressure come from? Where does it now? Maybe, and I don't know. People who are watching or listening to this, maybe your context is a little different. Because I do think it's an interesting conversation, even within the church community. Because we're on staff and we work within a church community, and we believe that community is important. right? And so what do churches do? They kind of initiate, they help create, they encourage, we put things on the calendar that would, to help people do this. And then, at the same time, we're sitting here kind of personally going, man, it's nice not to have all this social pressure. And so there's definitely like this weird tension that I would say, and I don't know, maybe the church isn't the only one. I think that there's a need, a real human need for relationships and community. But then is there also a social expectation, or maybe it's just more in our world, maybe other people don't feel it as much, but is there something that is sometimes pushed, or that like, oh, we got to be a community that's pushed beyond what we really want to do?
Yeah. Well,
what do you think?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think one of the things quarantine did is it relieved us from over-scheduling ourselves, because so many things were taken off our schedule immediately. So, like, I think this is going to sound bad, but I think we're all a part of like forced or obligatory community. Like, I have to go to this thing. I have to be at this, or I can't miss this.
Like,
right?
Let's say examples. Work functions.
Yep.
Work, right? Community, school.
Yep.
Community. If you have kids that are in school or whatever, there are certain events. It could be a faith community, that being a part of a church, there's some expectations of what it means to be part of a church. It could be family obligations that your wife's parents, your husband's parents, their cousins. We always get together. We do. I remember one person saying that they're big. Every year they would have these big family reunions that like 50 people come to it, and it was like, oh, we can't have it. Oh, that's too bad. Not really.
And nobody was disappointed.
Well, there's some who are disappointed, but there's others who are like forced to go to, usually it's the younger ones who are forced to go family, because the older you get, you value family more, and the younger you are, you kind of get forced to do it.
Yeah.
And so I didn't mean to stop you, but I didn't mess you up, but I wanted to identify what are some of those social pressures of community that are on us.
And so I think after you have all of those different things, it's almost like, well, where's the room for like the community that I want to be a part of?
That I want.
Where's the time in my schedule after all of that stuff? Or for people like me, who I'm super introverted, and I come home from work and I don't feel like talking anymore, so now I don't have anything left in the tank to be a part of the life-giving community that I want to be a part of. Obviously I do, and I can, whatever. But I think what quarantine allowed us was like, I'm going to be real picky and choosy because I have the freedom to do that now. Be in the community that I want to be in.
There's the irony of what you just said.
Yeah.
Quarantine that was forced on us gave me freedom.
Yeah.
It's almost like
that's kind of like a funny statement.
Yeah. I stand by it.
You stand by it. We were everybody revolted that we were forced to do quarantine. And I wonder how many people quietly, internally went, oh, government making a... Man, thank goodness. Man, this is really kind of nice. I do remember, I will say this. We go back and reflect on it. I do think there was a period of it that I remember going, well, this is kind of nice. Like every night I'm not wondering, what are our plans? Do we have to go to this event? Am I going to go pick up my daughter here and then go to that? You know what I mean? Like I didn't have to think about that. It was like, no, it's just us. We're just going to be at home. Yeah. There was something that was nice for a while.
Yeah.
But then there were also things that I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So I think it's that whole idea of
there's a balance.
Community we want versus the community that we're required or expected.
Yeah.
There's a social expectation.
Well, that's what I was going to speak to. I was going to say that I think coming out of quarantine, as we've kind of gotten back, we're now probably 12 to 18 months post-COVID as we've come back, and everything has, I think, hit a cycle now to kind of be normal again. And I think we're just right back to the same kind of, I think in America we're very performance-driven in general. I'm not saying specifically, but I think we're very performance-driven. And so I think for a lot of us, there's this pressure that we have to do certain things or have our kids be involved in certain things, because if we don't, there's a sense of we're falling behind, or somehow we're not giving enough opportunity or doing that sort of thing. And so I think that's for me, at least personally, the pressure that I feel. And I think going back to what you said, I think when you get into quarantine, there was just It's like, oh, I can just be here in my own little reality, in my own world, and do the things that I want to do. And when I actually had that space and time to think about it, I was like, oh, here's some things over here that I am realizing that I really love. And I want to do more of those things. And I want to spend more time there. And I think as we've kind of gotten back to it, I'm losing the ability to see that. But you said something also too, the whole idea that, forced restrictions kind of brought some freedom. I think there's a reason why books like Atomic Habits, we've talked about here, kind of Rule of Life, or just what does it mean to build disciplines into your life. There's a reason why some of those are top bestsellers. And I think it's because when you actually think about it, when you put a set of rules or restrictions around your life, guardrails, boundaries, whatever you want to call them, it actually creates the lane or the freedom for you to do the things you want to do.
Yeah. Well, I think what you kind of said about, this idea of forced restriction, it kind of makes me think, just even in our context, I think one of the reasons why people sometimes struggle with the idea of faith, they struggle with the idea of giving your life over to God, they struggle with, just idea of going to church, because here's the picture we've had. It's a bunch of rules.
Yeah, legalism.
To view God as a God, 10 commandments, shall not do this, shall not do this, right? This list of rules. And yet here's what's fascinating. We hate being told what to do. I mean, people revolted. And again, regardless of what people, it doesn't matter. It's whether it was right or not right. Wear a mask, I'm going to revolt. Get a shot, I'm going to revolt. Stay in my house, I'm going to revolt, right? I mean, it's people, because I think it's almost like it's in us, human nature. There's something in us that's, a mess that in general that we do not want to be told what to do, even if that thing is what we really want.
Yeah. Or need.
I mean, you think about one of the 10 commandments that God gave the people of Israel was to have a Sabbath.
Right.
It was to take a day off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's funny, it's like if you tell somebody you need to take a day off, I want you to work on this. It's like, oh, wait a minute. I need to do it. It's like, don't tell me not to. I want to be able to work. I want to do this. But then how many of us have tried to practice that go, wow, that's the most freeing thing ever? And so sometimes the very thing that we need the most, if we are told that we need it, we resist it. But then if we do experience it, sometimes we kind of find that, man, that was actually great. So, right?
Yeah, I mean, I almost wonder, you said before quarantine, busy, overworked, stressed. Middle quarantine, well, this isn't great, but I don't know if I feel the stress, overwork, overscheduled. And now post, we're feeling even more so.
Right.
I almost wonder if it's not we're doing more things. Maybe we've just tasted what slower pace feels like. So now back to normal feels way more overwhelming than it did before because we've experienced what maybe a healthier pace or schedule feels like now.
That's interesting.
It's a good point, because I think our pace is, as you mentioned, is like we're driven, but our pace is fast. That's the way I operate too. My pace is fast. And when things slow down, I kind of get like internally like frustrated.
There's like a anxiousness that comes.
I do. I think people that can relate to this, depending on if you're a business leader or owner, like I feel it in just even church ministry, because one of the things we've seen culturally for the last 6 months has been things in our world have slowed down. Like at a time where there's normal rhythms where we'd see people pick back up and reconnect with the church after the summer, all this, and it was like, nope, it's been flat. It's not just us. I mean, I'm talking to every pastor I talk to, the same thing. There is this people are less engaged. They're not attending as often as they were before. Some of which is like, oh, we're free now. So, hey, we're going to go travel. We're going to go to the lake house. We're going to go to the boat. We're going to go to this. We're going to, and so now I wonder if some of that is that response, what we've experienced in the church world of where there's a normal rhythm of connecting. People are like, no, we're going to go do that. We're going to go do that. And I just wonder if we are thrown back into a pace, like you said. I think that's a great point. Or being thrown back into a pace that is familiar, but we actually kind of miss what we didn't want,
right?
Which was when we were forced to slow down.
Right.
And that's kind of a fascinating idea to think. And so I guess coming out of that, as we were talking about the quarantine, what are the things, I mean, I guess we've kind of said it, that we miss the most. Maybe it's the forced slowdown, it's the lack of social pressures, it's the, I can do this. Let me ask this question, what's the dark side of that? Because there's surely a dark side of that. I mean, we sit around the table believe that there is something beautiful found in relationships. Like there's something found in community. There is something that we desperately need as people to have a bit of that in our lives. We believe that to our core, but at the same time, we're sitting here saying, man, it's kind of nice not to be forced to do that.
Yeah. So I think the dark side would be something that we probably experience in this culture is hyper individualization. Like you get.
Why is that bad?
Why?
Yeah.
Because I do think that we've said it here, we're hardwired, I think, to be in relationship with people. Now, people have different levels of that, okay? Some people, you're an introvert. And so you maybe need a smaller circle of people, but you still need a circle of people that you can connect with and relate to. You and I, our circles are probably a little bit bigger because we're extroverted. We're maybe hardwired to be around people a little bit more. But I think what's the danger is, you said the dark side of quarantine is that you can get so focused in your own world, you can isolate so much that you lose the relationships that you have with people around you. And I think it's really easy to do. I mean, you think about everyone has 4 or 5 devices with them at all times. I mean, you have a phone, a tablet, a laptop, a watch, a TV, and those devices are all curating content specifically for you, that just what you want. And I think it's really easy, if you're not careful, to get, we talked about echo chambers a lot on this podcast. We talked about the effect of social media and all those different things. So we don't need to go down those trails again, but I think it's really easy to get in a pretty narrow bubble really quickly.
Yeah.
And I think that would be the dark side of quarantine or isolation or that sort of thing. And by the way, that can happen and does happen. You don't need quarantine for that to happen. That can happen and does happen outside of just quarantine.
What about you? Do you think there's a dark side? You know yourself. What's the dark side to you enjoying, I'm a homebody, I want to just disconnect, be by myself, and if I could be forced to do it?
Yeah, well, I think for me personally, the dark side of that is I just have no life, and I could go through life and experience nothing. I mean, that could happen, which is why I'm grateful for people like my wife and friends like Tucker who make me do stuff.
Yeah.
Stuff that I want to do and enjoy doing.
You end up having fun when you do that stuff, but it's hard to get you to do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same conversation. Being forced to do something that is good for me, but left to my own devices, I don't know if I'd do for myself.
That's true.
So, like the obvious things that we missed in quarantine was like, the graduations or whatever.
Yeah.
Like we all want our kids to play a sport that they like or whatever. We all want that. So there's obviously pros to that, and there's great lessons kids learn in sports and memories and all that stuff. Well, at the same time, it puts a pinch on our schedule. And so,
You're forced to
it's
choose.
almost impossible to find a balance that gets you both.
Yeah.
I want time and experiences, and I want excess of both.
Yeah, I think for me, the good parts about quarantine was, and again, I think initially it was like I knew who my circle was every day. It was those in my house. Now, again, I think all of us have, wife, kids around. If you're single,
it's hard.
That's really hard. You're really alone. If you're an extrovert and single, that can be
hard,
really difficult.
Yeah.
So I think kind of the place that we're in maybe would determine how we experienced quarantine a little bit. And so I there was a cool nature that I knew it was going to be the 4 of us, or it was going to, you know what I mean, for a while. And so,
which, by the way, can I just speak to that real quick? I was listening to a podcast the other day, and the 2 speakers were talking about this idea of households, and how actually the modern household that kind of exists here in America. When you think of household, you think of, for the most part, a mother, a father, if it's a stable nuclear family with some kids. You have a single mom or a single dad. You could have one or two kids. You could have maybe it's just one single person. You don't have intergenerational people living in households anymore. You don't have aunts or uncles or people living close by anymore. That is actually something that's newer in human culture. If you look throughout history...
Well, I wouldn't say human culture, in American culture.
American culture.
It's not like that in many places overseas. It's not like that in the Middle East. It's not like that in different cultures. Over there, they still all live together. They have multiple generations living under the same roof.
Yeah.
And it's like, I remember talking, when I was in Israel, talking to one of the guides that we had, a Jewish guy that, he lived in Jerusalem. And they had multiple generations under the house. And when one of the kids got married, they would move in under the house and they share. Like, he was responsible for buying all the food. So they had jobs. They would pitch a certain amount of money together. He would order in bulk all the food. They would cook together. And over there, it was such a big deal that you took care of the elderly. Like, it was almost, it's an honor and shame thing. It was a disgraceful thing if the government had to take care of the elderly.
Family.
It was the honorable thing to do. So what I'm saying is, I think that is something newer that has kind of come to light in the American culture.
Yeah. So what you were saying, like our friends who are single, who may be extroverts during quarantine, it was hard for them. I'm like, it just sparked that memory of that podcast. That, man, even that is a newer thing that people are having to wrestle with, is being more alone.
Yeah.
In this moment, in this place. And I think let's recognize that that's more unique to us as a culture. Are we better for that, or worse for that, or was better or worse? I don't know.
Well, I think for me, the dark side of it was being such an extrovert and an external processor, and someone who is trying to, at the time, trying to lead our church, and our people through it, it was like, I hated working from home. I hated the idea. Like, hate's such a strong word. There were aspects of it I liked. It was nice to be like, oh, I'm going to go in my office now, and you're not traveling, and you're not, you could kind of go to work in your sweats if you wanted to. I still didn't, but I just, you could. But the aspect of Zoom calls with the team, we do all staff rally on Monday morning and people popping on there, and it was just, after a while I was like, this stinks. Like, I want to see you. I want to sit at a table with you. There's so much loss. I think it's one of the things that did highlight is that I think that there is, in the business world, in life, there is some room for digital connection. There is some, I think we saw that in the corporate world. Like, they're like, we can do transactions digitally. We can have some meetings digitally, and we really could, and we probably could still do that, and we probably still do to some extent. But when it comes to, like, I just feel like the people that I work with, probably because our world's a little different, it intermingles the whole idea of church community and work. But like, these are you guys are my community. Like, I want to see you every day. I want to pop in and hang out. What's going on? What's new? And you know what I mean? And feel like I have that connection. And so for me, I don't think that was more important to me than the slow down time, probably because I don't like that. So for me, that was the thing. I was like, I would rather not go back to quarantine because of that. I think one thing that I will agree with you on, Jesse, is that, I've actually had a lot of thoughts about this, even as a church and how to lead it, is that the whole aspect of, I want like real organic community more than I want forced community.
Right.
And that's an interesting dynamic, because in many ways, like, when you become part of the church, you become this, that is kind of like a pulling together of, and so there's a bigger, broader sense of community, but then there's this smaller sense where I think we get our individual needs met and we find life in the people that we get to do life with. that I think is important. And I think everybody has to find that and what it looks like. And for you, it could look different than it looks for me or for you. And so I think that is something that it highlighted for me, is that sense of in the quarantine. So I don't know. I mean,
think you see a lot of, well, to your point about work, I think you see a lot of businesses trying to meet people where they're at, coming back. I mean, now you read in Wall Street Journal, every publication out there, that hybrid is now the new work schedule, trying to meet people with, hey, here's some freedom, but also let's get people into the office. So is hybrid here to stay, do you think?
I do.
You think?
I think it's here to stay. Do you like hybrid? Do you like the idea of hybrid?
I'm probably a little bit more like you. I like to be around people, and I like to interact with people that I work with. I love the people that I work with here.
Yeah.
And so I think I really value that time together. I do think that it is here to stay. And so the inner 3 achiever in me, I'm totally admitting my faults here, wants to figure out a way to master it. Like, how do I master being
hybrid? What about you?
Hybrid work environment. But
is hybrid work environment appealing to you?
So that's where I'm probably a little weird. I actually like coming to the office as well.
Yeah.
I think it's a weird, I think, introvert thing. I don't like to explain ideas through an email or a text. I want to come talk to you about it, because I feel like
if it's one-on-one,
if I see, I prefer that. That way.
That's what I mean.
Is like, instead of like, hey, let me shoot this email out into the void and hopefully you understand the point I'm trying to make, I'd rather just come and talk to you and say, hey, so I know I can see your face. You know, you see my face. Even as an introvert.
Is the message received?
Yeah.
Properly. Yeah. Well, I think a lot of times people think that introverts is like, being an introvert is synonymous with, I don't want to be around people and it drains me. That's not true. Yeah. Introverts, though, and different ones, but often just like to connect and engage on a smaller scale. Yeah. Like they like a one-on-one or one-on-two meeting. They don't want to do. So my guess is the smaller, like little environments, probably you would still get excited about.
Oh, yeah.
Let's go connect one-on-one. Let's do this. It's the bigger community type things that you kind of get a little bit more, I don't know, uncomfortable, or they drain you more. Would you a lot faster. And so, I mean, I think as a cultural reaction to this, that is something that I think is one of those reactions to the pandemic.
I agree.
Was that everybody was forced to work from home.
Right.
And then out of that, I think companies, business leaders, owners started going, wait a minute. You know, I think employees go, well, I like that. I'd like to work from home.
Yeah.
And companies are going, wait, there are some benefits. Like, I mean, I think a big question right now is what happens. We've had some conversations, our executive team's had conversations and we're going to be talking about this here soon, but like, what happens to our productivity? And I think that's the big question mark. Does productivity go up if we give hybrid, or you get, if people aren't working all together? Does it go up or does it go down? And I think it could go up.
Yeah.
It depends on what you do. I think there's obviously some roles, some jobs, some things where you have to be around people. If you're a teacher, you aren't working from home and doing Zoom. And there's not a teacher in this world that would go, boy, I can teach a lot better over Zoom than I can in person in a classroom.
Right.
I would imagine.
Right.
I don't want to say that for sure, but but I do think there are a lot of jobs and roles, and I know a lot of people, even in our church I've talked to, that have a hybrid schedule and they love it.
Yeah.
Or they're like, man, if I don't have to go in the office, I don't want to go in the office.
Right.
Yeah. I also wonder if I had a different job, because like you said, one of the beautiful things about our job is we work with all of our friends.
And we love what we do. We have a shared sense of mission.
Yeah. But if I had maybe a different job, I would totally see loving remote.
Yeah.
And I think there's benefit to like businesses of like, we don't have to rent a giant office building and pay the cost of that. And ship everybody a laptop and a webcam or whatever.
Yep.
Let's do that.
I don't think it's going away.
Yeah.
I think it's here to stay. And I think that every organization, every company out there, again, some service industry, really hard to do that, right? If you're a restaurant, you're this, like you have to have employees there. Yep. But I think outside of that, I think this is a real conversation everybody is trying to figure out and how to have, because I think what can be lost is there's team dynamic, there's communication. There, we can do it over Zoom. It's better, or video. It's better for sure. But, there is like collaborative things that happen. We come up with ideas in events. I would much rather be sitting at a table bouncing ideas. Nah, that won't work. Versus waiting and
Zoom,
one person talks and then it cuts the audio on the other person. And it's like, you can't just get the best idea sometimes. So I think that there is a need for that. But then I think we all have a certain amount of work that we do. I gotta prepare a message on the weekends. I can't have a bunch of people in the room. I have to be by myself.
Right.
I think it's here to stay.
I agree.
And I think that there's so again, just to maybe wrap up this whole idea of this conversation. I don't even know what all we talked about other than you miss the quarantine badly.
There's parts of quarantine I miss.
The good parts.
The good parts. Yeah.
I miss the base.
You crave community but hate being with people. That's what I got from. Is that all right? Okay. That's what you heard too. That's what I heard.
That's not what I said.
I think one of the things that I hope in this conversation, we're just kind of talking about some things today. I hope maybe it'll force all of us, everybody that's listening or watching, for you to even just. It's a great question to do on the other side of this. Reflect back and say, what did you really like about the quarantine? Forced, not forced, doesn't matter. What did you like about it? Changed my pace. Okay. Maybe how do we not so quickly jump back into the pace we had before? Because you said maybe what we're feeling, that we feel like it's even worse than ever before, but really it's just going back to the way it was, and we had that pause in between to see what it feels like. So I think reevaluating the pace of what we do. The challenge with pace, I think, are the social pressures.
Yep.
The communal pressures that we have. The kids, family, like giving our kids this and making sure there's trips and that they can do this and do all these things they ever wanted to do. I think those are like significant challenges, and I think what will come out of that, hopefully, is do we really assess and make some decisions that maybe aren't popular?
Resist.
They're not normative anymore. They're going against the grain. Like, is it bad to say, no, kids, we're not going to go and do that? I know everybody's doing that, but we're going to be home. Our family's going to be home for one day. We're not going out to eat. We're not going to do this. We're going to be home because we feel like we can connect at home. Like, that, is there something that if we're paying attention and if we stop trying to be mad at what we lost, is there something that was maybe beneficial?
Yep.
That was maybe forced on us because we didn't have the discipline to actually create that beforehand?
Yep. That
we just ran so hard. And so I think, when it comes to just coming out of that, maybe we just kind of observe and internally process. And I do think that there is this weird tension that we walk as leaders in our context. And I think that people need community, but don't want to be forced into community that they don't need.
Right.
And how can we help provide, and this is what we do in our churches, how do we provide the right kind of environments where people can find the community that is life-giving?
Right.
And is thriving? And I think when you find that balance, as you said, I think then that's when we feel the most whole.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm curious, maybe even if you're kind of watching this, you're listening, like, what did you miss about I think one of the ones that was kind of interesting, that it was, I don't know if I missed it or didn't, but not being able to go shopping or go out to eat was like kind of bad, but kind of not.
Good for the wallet.
It's good for the wallet. It was like, never on this we're arguing over, well, I want to go out. I don't want to go out. Can we go out there? I don't, it's like, no, it's what we're making and we're here. And it's almost like taking away a bunch of options kind of brings a sense of sanity to your life. Yes. It's like going to the Cheesecake Factory. They have, I like the Cheesecake Factory because I found a meal that I love. And every time I go there, I order the same thing. Mm-hmm. I don't want to look, it gives me hives to look through the menu. Cheesecake Factory has 7,000 options. And I just sit there and go,
breaking out.
I don't even look.
As you're doing it.
Spicy chicken chipotle pasta.
That sounds good.
The greatest thing on their menu. I don't know if it's the greatest.
Are we going there right now?
I would love to. But spicy chicken chipotle pasta from the Cheesecake Factory, I order every time. I haven't been there in a long time. But it is so good. And there's something freeing about not having tons of options, and I think taking it away. And so, the question is, can we have the discipline to create the life that we really want to live? Not become a recluse. Jesse, don't become a recluse, because there is life experiences. I'm the same way. I have this weird tension, and my wife and I both, like, she's an introvert, and she doesn't often want to go do things. Okay, and then there are other aspects of things that she wants to go do that I don't want to do. So it's weird. Like, if it's part of our community, or if it's part of kind of what we're doing, like, maybe I feel a sense of obligation because of what I do, but I'm like, oh, I also think it's because of the connection that we have, or I make with people in the church. I'm like, oh, hey, they're doing this. We want to go to this. And she's like you in that regard, introvert, and would rather, like, that drains me, but I'll do it, at times. And then we go do something, because that was great.
Yep.
That was a really cool experience, right?
Yeah.
On the flip, she's the one that always wants to, let's go drive to that coffee shop an hour away and do that. And I'm like, it's a lot of driving to go to a coffee shop. I don't even like coffee that much. I'd rather just stay home.
Yeah.
And so she has to force me away from the home when it's to go do something, if it's not even related to people, but it's to go do things. I'm like, let's go to that store and that store, and let's get this. And I'm like, and we'll go here and eat outside. And I'm like, or we could just stay home. There's things we could do around the house. You know what I mean? So she has to force me out. And so I think we all are on a journey of learning ourselves.
We are.
And so you want to go back to quarantine. Do you want to go back or no?
There's parts of it that I miss, but I don't want to go back.
You don't want to go back?
No.
But
I
don't want to go back to quarantine, but I do want to learn something from it. And that I don't know that we're doing, because we're kind of culturally just going back
moving on
to the same patterns and same behaviors that we had before, and we're going to be just as miserable as we were before the quarantine and COVID and pandemic. And so hopefully we can learn something. And hopefully, if you're watching this, listening to it, hopefully this got you thinking about yourself and about community and all those things. I think they're important, but trying to find that balance in life. And before we go, we also just need to quickly make mention that our producer, Lydia, it's her birthday today as we record this.
Come on, Lydia.
And so we just want to say happy birthday. I don't even know if most people probably, I don't think she's ever been on here, don't even know what she looks like.
No.
And we need to have her on here somehow. Awesome. Get somebody else to help with the switching and all the other stuff. We need to get Lydia to come on here. We've been talking forever if we could get her a mic, but we're not really sure how we're going to do it just in our setting the way we have it. But happy birthday, Lydia. Thank you for all you do to get this podcast out. Like, you do editing, you do switching, you do setting up of cameras. She does it all.
Queen Lydia.
Yeah. And so, Lydia, we just want to say happy birthday. I think she is 33 today.
That's right. 21.
Is she 21?
I think it's 21.
21? Is this your 21st birthday?
It is.
Switch twice if it is. That's how we communicate with her. We're like, switch twice for yes. Okay, so well, happy 21st birthday. That's exciting. Don't do anything you'll regret. And hey, thanks for tuning in with us. As always, we hope you found something enlightening in this. And if not, well, catch the next episode. It could be a lot better. I don't know. Thanks for being on here, guys.
Thanks for having me.
Zach and Jesse, thanks for being on here for this conversation. As always, maybe if you like this, would you rate it? It does really help get the word out about it, and maybe share it with somebody you think it will be helpful for. So again, it was great to have you. Until next week, have a great one.